Camera.
Speed. You want four?
Elizabeth Harvest came from the folktale of Bluebeard, which is a story that I've always liked very much. I was always very intrigued by Bluebeard because it's a French folktale and it's been told many different times, but the concept is always the same, which is there's this rich widower who marries a young bride, and he brings her up to his castle and he shows her all the rooms in the castle and he gives her a key with every key to every room in the castle except for this one room that she can't go into. So of course he eventually goes away and she gets curious and she goes into this room, and in the original story the room is a torture chamber where you find out he has murdered his 6 previous wives.
This is sort of modernized and kind of science fiction a bit, mixed with horror. And I've never worked in that genre before, so I was kind of a little bit confused as to what direction or how you actually film that. But Sebastian, who's a very literary man himself, explained to me it's about what he wanted to do was to have a bit of a thriller mixed with mystery, but at the heart of it, a man who was pining for love, really, trying to recreate something he lost.
What I always found strange is that his character was always portrayed as a tragic monster. Like, he was not just the bad guy, it was like he was sorry he had to do this, but now that you had broken the promise, I have to kill you. And I always thought, well, that's weird, that doesn't, that's not very nice. And so my answer was, well, maybe there's a tragic love story behind it of why he has to do this thing. But my problem with it was, of course, that all the interesting things had already happened off screen. Like, the 6 previous wives had already died, so you just had one wife. So it took a while to put together. I was like, oh, but if there's a clone and you can have the same actors play every role, then you would have a much more interesting story, and you can make a story, therefore, about this tragic, obsessive love, all about one person being obsessed with one person.
My first impression of the script after reading it was, I've got to do my very best to get this role, firstly. Because as an actor, being a female, it can be very difficult to get your hands on scripts with such dynamic characters. The emotionality and the strength and just the journey that Elizabeth goes through it's very hard to come by. I was very passionate to try and get the role because I wanted to be able to move through Elizabeth's experience. It's a very difficult question trying to describe Elizabeth because there is something so enigmatic about her. You know, she doesn't have a lifetime of experience in the same way that a woman in her mid-20s would have. You know, she's been blanketed from life for so long, so she's so many things. She's a child, she's becoming a woman, she's experiencing coming of age, all in like a very short space of time. And I don't know, to me Elizabeth is like a flower, you know, and she also has she's a mystery to me too sometimes, you know. It's very interesting to attempt to play a character that has no life experience, you know. It was a very strange thing to begin, and hopefully I nailed it.
I think what Abbey Lee is doing so beautifully with this role is that each version of Elizabeth has a very subtle but tangible difference. And one is perhaps a little bit more naive than the other. One is a bit more resourceful as she's learned more about the world. So there's really beautiful differences between each one that she's portraying that I'm just getting to see.
The way that I see it is that it's a transition from a girl into a woman, and it's finding the confidence and the strength that a woman needs to survive in society that is predominantly run by men. So for me it was very much, has a very feminist symbolism to it.
Claire is a very interesting woman. I've never played a character like this before. She's very internal. You don't really know what's going on with her a lot of the time. I think as a scientist, she has depended on her intellect. She's incredibly smart. And emotionally, I think she's less developed. I think she is, so there's a real question as she sees what Henry is doing and that he might possibly be losing his mind. The fact that she stays has always been something very intriguing to me. And it'll be up to the audience to decide, does she stay for love? Does she stay for science? One of the things I really like about this movie is that it asks a lot of questions, but it doesn't answer a lot of them, which is my favorite kind of movie.
And then Matthew is like, me and Matthew got along like a house on fire instantly. He makes me laugh so much. And I think he's doing such a brilliant job. To play a blind character, that the challenges that comes with that are incredible. That connection that you have with another actor, you can't have because you can't look at them. And he's doing such a brilliant job at keeping it together when having to do that.
The thing that attracted me most to the script was this interrogation of loss as a feeling. When we've lost something we love, and the futility of trying to recreate that feeling. And Sebastian has done a very literal version of that, which is that Henry, who lost his wife, is trying to recreate her very literally again and again, is trying to grab this feeling which has gone away.
This desire to recreate something that he lives for, sort of turns rather sour and bitter, and it manifests in him a cruel streak and a desire to smash what he was trying to create because it isn't right, and that's where the turn happens.
Being in love and feeling loved is something that you don't want to lose or let go of, and that's what this guy is trying to do, even though it's in a pretty horrifying situation.
The production design is a huge part of this movie, obviously, so it was really interesting when we came to Bogota to scout the architecture of the house as described in the movie. Is not something that is really that common here, so it was very, very hard to find. We ended up doing a combination of a couple of houses plus stage work.
The house was another character. Like basically there were 4 characters, but when she got trapped in this space, this house, Villa Kallenberg, the architecture started to be like the star of the film too. So for me, since the first moment was very interesting to create this world, and like if a scientist was going to hide in a beautiful house with great architecture in the middle of the mountains, and then to underneath have this secret world, it for me was an opportunity of creating something visually stunning and different from everything I've done before. When Sebastian and Kale told me what was going to be like their process in the photography, the composition, and like the proposal, it was all layered by moods.
We basically took 4 main colors for our movie that represented 4 different emotions, and for the present day portions of the movie, we used those colors in a more subtle way, but still held true to that color ringing true per scene. And then for all the flashbacks in the film, we went very, very deep with that same color, depending on the emotion. So, say if there's a scene that's red, it represents danger. So danger in the present day is kind of it's more of an amber color, but it still has red roots to it, but it's more of an amber, so you're still not totally changing the look. Whereas the flashbacks, we went full-blown red, deep red, kind of a Wong Kar-wai red is what we call it. Harken back to some of Wong Kar-wai's movies, 2046 and stuff like that. So we did that with all 4 of our major colors in the movie, and we've held true every scene. We have a plan as to how to attack it, and we've kept those colors, those primary colors, as the main theme of the look of each one of those scenes.
The world of Elizabeth Harvest is almost an artificial world created by Henry Kallenberg to show her things. So everything's on display. There's this art gallery room, and it's all been put there almost like a game for her to discover things and for her curiosity to be awakened.
we felt like this movie needed to be a little smoother in its style as far as the camera operating. So we tried to do, you know, interestingly composed frames. Also, if there's any kind of camera movement, we tried to make it like a nice composed dolly move that could actually hold for the length of the move and not have to cut into it in the edit.
Okay, and Carla, back to one. Vamos a hacer una más lento.
We did, you know, some crane work. There's a little bit of Steadicam work. So trying to keep the camera from moving too much, but moving for a purpose. You know, just moving to move, I always feel is a violation of a film. It's like, you know, the camera move should make a statement and help move the story along. For me, as a cameraman, one of my main tools, obviously, is the camera and the lens attached to it. I mean, camera bodies aside, you know, obviously film is a great medium, but, you know, especially in the world of HD, lenses really tell the story more than the camera. And so we talked about which lenses we potentially would want to use for this. And anamorphic is just, there's something about an anamorphic lens that just screams cinema. Anamorphic lenses have an organic texture to them that I feel is just, it's something about it from, you know, watching movies that are, you know, that are shot in anamorphic that screams cinema.
Throughout the 6-week period, because of sets and the shooting schedule, I was often required to be all 4 Elizabeths in one day. Most often being 2 or 3 in a day. I don't know if I've had a day where I've just been 1. I think I've had to switch numerous times. And, you know, the preparation that I did beforehand, I was very careful to make sure that I could slip into each Elizabeth with ease, because if I didn't work that out, it would have been a catastrophe. Well, I think that there are certainly differences between the Elizabeths. It was important for me to, I mean, obviously I'm playing all of them, so they're all going to be the same person, but I found a way to segregate them to try and showcase different aspects of personality and different levels of maturity and just different places in life. I mean, even though they're all a clone, they also, there's you know, that big thing of the way that the things that happened to you as a child and they were alive until the age of 6, and what happens to each Elizabeth at the age of 6 might then form who they are as an adult. So I played around with a lot of different things, but it's also, I don't know, maybe the audience won't see any difference between them all. I don't know. That's up to everyone else to decide. But for me, it was a very personal thing to try and give each character their own face.
From Elizabeth's standpoint, what's interesting is she has been, the original Elizabeth was madly in love with this person, but these new Elizabeths that we're meeting have been brainwashed or have been given information that they are madly in love with this person. So it really is a study more in identity, and the best way that I can describe it is that when I described it to Abbey, I said, you know, Elizabeth Harvest is a detective story in which Elizabeth is the detective, but what she doesn't realize is that she's the mystery. What she's finding out is she's the one that doesn't add up because she's not what she thinks that she is. But built into the DNA of the story is something that I think goes back to Adam and Eve, which is, you know, there's all these stories where if women are given knowledge, right, like in Adam and Eve, or in being curious and finding a room that you're not supposed to look at, men go crazy, you know. So the secret story of the movie is a very, it is the 2 women in the story that actually, even though they're set up, if not necessarily as enemies, they're set up as on opposing sides, that the humanity of the story comes through, and the 2 men in the story who end up being, you know, the same character are the ones bent on owning and or destroying them. Out of love, by the way, out of love gone crazy.
Hey, thanks for watching Staying with Horror. For the movie The Omen, Damien originally had a different name. Screenwriter David Seltzer planned to name his Antichrist Donlan after the total obnoxious brat of a child of a friend, until his wife convinced him that it would be a horrible thing to do to the kid, and not to mention friendship ending. He landed on the Damien after Father Damien, who started the first leper colony in the Hawaiian Islands. Do you like my shirt? You can get one for yourself from the link in the description.